Have you reached a point on your spiritual awakening journey where it feels hopeless, where you feel even more lost than when you started years ago, where you feel abandoned by all of the people, processes, and aids that used to help you? Well, then it's time to take the final step. It's about to get really good and completely different from anything you've ever experienced, but you have to make a very major shift. So first of all, let me explain that a spiritual awakening is nothing other than the awakening of your spirit. What you have probably been engaged in to this point has been the re-educating of your mind, the healing of your shadow, the training of your thought process, the purging of your traumas, the healing of your traumas, the purging of your fears, the redesigning of your life, the study of spiritual knowledge, the practice of spiritual rituals, conversations with elders, tools, spiritual tools and spiritual rituals that help, whether they're ancient rituals like a sweat lodge or sort of more modern rituals formats such as hypnotherapy or quantum sessions, whatever you've been doing. Plant medicines, maybe you've been turning to plant medicines, maybe you have been turning to gurus, to physical gurus in the world. All of these things are incredibly useful along a spiritual journey. That is the journey. That is the transition phase where you go from completely unconscious, completely unaware, lost inside of your mind, lost inside of your physical existence, and you shift and you become aware, you journey and grow and become aware of the fact that you are more than your mind and you are more than your body. You start to realize how your mind affects your reality, right? All of this is what you've done so far. And you start to ask questions and you start to ask for help and you start to understand how the universe works, how manifesting works, how pain works, how trauma works, how fear works, how self-sabotage works. And you turn to your ancestors and you heal that wound with your ancestors and you heal the wound with your parents. All of that stuff you have done. And it's great and it's fantastic. But there comes a moment when they don't work for you anymore. Sometimes your plant medicine will actually tell you, this relationship is done. We're not going to progress anymore. Sometimes, all the time, there comes a point when your guru turns their back on you. When your guru says it's time for you to leave the ashram, or it's time for you to cleave from this dependency with me. You can't keep coming to me and asking me questions anymore. I am not your interceder. I'm not interceding for you. Any true guru who is not in it for their ego or money, anybody who's genuinely serving the role of a guru who's trying to help you, will take you to this point. They say that when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. But when you are really ready, the teacher leaves. It is part of the process. All of the things that you have turned to before, your favorite YouTube channel, your favorite book, they will all no longer seem useful and they will frustrate you in their uselessness. You are probably at this point, which is probably why you're watching this video. So I want to say again that all of those things are very useful. There's nothing wrong with them. But you have come to the point which is the point of spiritual awakening, where you turn inwardly and find your inner guide. The purpose of all of these things is ultimately to lead you to the fact that you are divine. You are God. You are a God, a piece of God. I won't say a fragment. You're an aspect of God that has come into this space, and you have never been separated from your spirit. The part of your being that existed before you were born and after you, that will persist after you die. That part of your being has never ceased to be. That part of your being does not primarily exist in this physical world. It exists everywhere, in the one place, in the one time. It exists beyond space, exists beyond time. Exists beyond this particular timeline and this particular version of you. It exists beyond all of your problems and all of your pains, all of your fears, all of your desires. It exists where there's no such thing as I cannot or may I. It exists where it is capable of everything. This being is what we can call your spirit, and this is the being that is seeking to, we can say, awaken. So all of the work that you have done up until this point is pointing you to the fact that this being, this aspect of yourself, is seeking to take control. That sounds like it wants to dominate you, like some sort of possession. That's not it. It wants to become the dominant or the primary place from which you exist. So it wants you to shift from existing as a small, limited, frail, wounded being that is trapped in the physical dimension, i.e. you, what you call yourself, and shift to experience life as this spiritual being, to perceive from the spiritual being, to get your help from the spiritual being, to get your teaching from the spiritual being. So all of the spiritual tools that you've used up until now will point you towards that. They will all point inside of you. They're all pointing inside of you. And the reason why you feel rejected by them is because they're saying it's time to go inside. So what does this mean? I don't mean that you're going to go inside of your body. I mean that you're going to go inside of your experience. Have you come to the point yet where the primary spiritual practice that you do is stillness? Let's call it meditation. It's just meditation has so many misunderstandings in it. The transition phase that you're in right now, the chances are the universe has isolated you from a lot of people, and chances are the universe has reduced the amount of time that you spend outside of your home working. Oftentimes the universe will send the funds to allow you to be at home. You may not perceive it. You might think, oh, I got fired. No, you got isolated. That's a different thing. And the world now becomes smaller and smaller until the world actually becomes inside of yourself. You have to spend a certain amount of time every day. It will come naturally from a natural hunger, a natural tendency. A certain amount of time every day, not engaging in what's going on outside, the people, the concerns, your five senses, the things you have to do. No. And you just go into the experience of being, of sensing, of experiencing. Like what you might feel if you listen to meditative music. You might just feel like there's a sense of floating, a sense of just relaxing. That is what you call turning inward, turning to your inner being. The inner being is not inside of your body. The inner being is inside of your awareness. So if you have your five senses up here, your inner being is behind that. Think of, if you're familiar with the story of the birth of Krishna, where the 5 guards fell asleep, or the story of Jesus ascending to the top of the mountain, and the disciples falling asleep. It's the same metaphor. It's the concept that in order to arise to that Christ consciousness, you have to go inside. And inside means not inside of your flesh, but inside of your senses, behind your senses. So put those senses to sleep. Close your eyes, shut off the world, and go into this layer of your experience that doesn't have the physical world in it. So if I tell you to stop speaking and to stop eating and to stop walking, then you're going to say, well, what am I doing? And I'm going to say, you're not doing, you're being. And if I tell you to stop sensing what you hear and sensing what you see and sensing what you smell, then you're going to say, well, what am I sensing? And my answer will be, you're not sensing, you're experiencing. This is the meditation process that you have to turn inside for. You can keep going back to those rituals or the people and begging them for help. But if you have come to the point where they're refusing your help, then they're all insisting that you start focusing on your experience. Experience is another word for awareness. Awareness is another word for consciousness. Your perception, your feeling. This is a terrifying process because it is not led by the ego. If I take away all the things that you do and all the people that you interact with and all the five senses that you perceive, that your mind thinks about, and if I take away the constant unconscious stream of thoughts that are really just fears and memories, then what is left? All that is left is pure isness, just being. And your ego is not in the business of being. Your ego is in the business of doing, seeing, perceiving, thinking, remembering, fearing, and all that stuff. So this meditation process is the process of shifting from what the ego does to what the spirit does. And it is a terrifying process, but that is why the spiritual journey is so long, because it takes you, it tames you, it refines you, and it prepares you. And if you're watching this video, you're at a point where you're ready to start this. So start that stillness and that silence. A lot of times meditations that you find out there are leading you to, are speaking to your ego, your egoic identity, and telling you to perceive something else. Those are valid in their time. Visualizations help me so much. Guided meditations help me so much. But what I am asking you to do is to start experiencing what it feels like to simply is, to simply be, to simply I am. And to do that, you need to do the type of meditation that is guided by your own inner being. The simplest and fastest way to do that is to turn to your breath. The act of breathing does two things. It is not possible to think another thought. It is not possible to think another thought while you are putting all of your awareness on your breath. Not possible. So it forces the ego to step aside. The second thing with your breath is that your breath is governed by your spirit. So when you put your attention on your breathing, you are putting your attention on the work that your spirit does, on the being of your spirit. So I recommend, my go-to meditation is always the conscious breath. To listen to the sound of your breathing, to feel your breathing, set a timer, set a 5-minute timer, and just simply be with your breath. Set a 1-minute timer and be with your breath. And when that alarm goes off and you come back, you'll be like, oh, wow, I get it. I get what being is. So you go through that long phase of learning, preparing, purging, and refining the body, the mind, and the ego. And then you go through this phase of understanding what it means to turn inwards, what it means to have silence, what it means to experience beingness. And then you come to the final step, which is where you surrender to this state. You're no longer observing the state, but you are this state. You're no longer the one asking the prayer. You're the one answering the prayer. You're no longer the ego looking at the spirit. You're the spirit looking at the ego. This moment can happen if there is a desire inside of you for it to happen. That desire is not coming from your ego. It is coming from your spirit. And if your spirit says that it is time for this to happen, then it will happen. It's not true that it happens to an incredibly rare number of people. 1 in a million people this will happen to. No. 1 in a million people will be able to sustain it 100% of the time and to live and act as gods completely and utterly disidentify from their egos. True. But you don't need that. You just need to know the difference between your egoic self and your spirit. That's all you need. And that takes 1 millisecond. Hold the practice, the daily practice of being. Use breathing to experience breathing. Breathing and being, this meditative practice, takes you into the state of presence, takes you into the state of spirit. And from this place, your spirit is able to help you more and more and more and more, which is called grace. Grace comes and grace takes you over the threshold. And eventually, one day, you will have an aha moment where you realize that your ego is a temporary, finite, insignificant part of your being, and that your spirit is ever present and all powerful and completely loving. And when you have that moment, it only has to last for 1 split second, but you will sigh the biggest sigh that you have ever sighed in your life. And everything will be okay. And you will have no fear. You will have no fear of death. You will have no fear of others dying. You will have no fear of failure. You will have no fear of being attacked anymore, because you understand your nature. I really can't give you a clearer description of it. I just want to assure you that it's there. And I want to explain to you where or what point of the journey you're at. What I will do is tomorrow, for those of you that are watching this in real time, tomorrow I will upload a second video called Working with Your Higher Self. And I'm going to describe the process of actually hearing guidance from your higher self. Even that, words are something that really trip you up if you take them too literally. Even that is not accurate, right? Remember the big long journey we talked about? That is where the ego asks the higher self, tell me something. What I want to take you through is the process of speaking from the spirit to the ego, leaving guidance for the ego to find and to pursue. So yeah, just look forward to that video, working with the higher self. And I hope that this video has been helpful to you. Please leave comments and let me know. I really want to know how this is helping, how you're understanding. I can always try a different approach for explaining. Okay, so thank you very much and enjoy your day, everyone.